Nice. All
So,
right.
all right. Uh, First of all, thank you so much, Paul, and welcome to the Sales Talk podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gopi. It's a pleasure.
Yes, and I think this is a special episode. And thanks for having me here at your home studio.
Yeah, my home studio, man. I figured I saw the recordings you did via Zoom or like Google Meets or something, and I figured, come on, we can do this better, especially if you live close by. We just figured out we're basically neighbors, so
That's
might
true.
as well.
That's true. I mean, I just figured that out, and it's super interesting. And yeah, so I think you've already seen the episodes, and this is primarily also focusing on, let's just say, the sales topics. And I wanted to do with account executives or anyone in the sales industry, right?
Yeah,
And
super cool, by the way. I like the format. I saw the one with Giannis, and I met him a couple times before in the past. Good guy, and he dropped a lot of good insights. So I hope I can come close to that today. Let's see.
of course. But yeah, thank you so much. And I don't want to, waste a lot of time and get to the point. So
Okay.
how about you introduce a bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Of course, of course. I think for this context, makes a lot of sense to get right into the sales related
Yeah.
things about myself. I mean, there's probably a lot of other things I can talk about my personality and stuff. But regarding my career background, as you mentioned, my name is Paul. Probably to start with, not from Berlin, but moved here about 3 years ago, and originally started off my career, if you want to call it that, in barbering. So not quite conventional, not quite the, I don't know, MBA business school path that a lot of my colleagues took. But still am here today as an account executive for Swan, one of the fastest growing fintechs in Europe, as I always say quite boldly in my day in the life videos that I started posting on LinkedIn. But a little bit about the journey. Do you want to start there already, or is that enough for
Sure.
now?
I mean, so as you already know, the topic for today is going to be your journey from a barber to an account executive. So this is something super interesting, and that's also what I want to share with you guys. I think Paul has had a very interesting journey, and I would just give it to him. He's better at explaining this and how he got started as a barber, and now a successful account executive at Swan.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I think it's funny because people ask me all the time, Paul, like, how did you get there where you are today? Not to say that I'm like I've made it or anything like crazy like that. I don't think that's the case, but people still see my CV and they might, or they know me from a couple of years ago when I was still cutting hair, and they always ask this question. So it's good now finally like recording this, so if people ask, I can just send them the video. It will help out quite a bit. So it's in a bit of self-interest of recording this. But to your question, so how everything started, I think I should explain that when I was 19, I graduated from high school. That is almost 6 years ago now, so I'm only 25, still young guy, at least I'd like to think so. Anyways, so
Always remain young. Yeah.
yeah. So graduated high school, then pretty quickly after that I moved to Australia, to Sydney, Australia, to study there at an international leadership college, which was quite a crazy experience because that was at the beginning of 2022, so just before the COVID lockdowns and just after the Sydney wildfires. So I don't know if you remember those
Yep.
news when basically half of Sydney was burning. I arrived quite shortly after that, and then quite shortly before the first COVID lockdowns. So it was just in that little bit of time frame, and after that no one was allowed to even travel to Australia. So I was quite literally locked there, but I had a good time still because I met a lot of great people, and it was quite formative years for me. I spent almost 2.5 years there at this college that I was studying at, and then simultaneously I started barbering because even before that I was cutting some friends' hairs in Germany, but I figured if I moved there, it would be a good skill to learn because I will have a lot of broke friends who probably need a haircut. So they probably let me, practice on them. So that's quite literally how it started. So I had a couple housemates who I told, hey, do you want to get a haircut? Let me try this out. My old barber, who became a friend before moving to Australia, gave me his old clippers. I took them with me to Australia and then started cutting hair until they broke down midway through a haircut. So someone was quite literally sitting there with like half a fade, and they were like, what the fuck happened? So I had to borrow my neighbor's clippers, who also happened to be a barber, who then taught me a lot. Let's skip all this process. So I started cutting hair in my garage, then moved to a barbershop after like half a year of cutting and learning on friends, and then started charging a little bit and a little bit more over time, etc. And then made it to the barbershop, so to speak. And then my learning really began, because from having a couple friends, come by every week, I was having like 10, 15, 20 people maybe on a busy day in my chair every day, right? So the learning curve was quite steep from there. And I think what helped and prepared me quite a bit during that time as a barber was just having to interact with new people on like a 30-minute schedule, right? So you have 30 minutes for your haircut. People get in, and it's all kinds of different people from all kinds of different ways of life, with all of different mindsets and different headspaces and etc. You have to get really good at reading people, at reading the room really quick, right? So that sped up that process of me like developing my soft skills and obviously my hard skills of barbering as well, but just talking to people. And then what we would always try to do is obviously upsell them on another service, right? So they would come in for the haircut, midway through the haircut, be like, hey, don't you want to get your beard trimmed as well? They were like, okay. So that's the first, extra $20 that you make. And then, hey, don't you want to try out this new beard oil or this new hair gel or whatever? So you'd put it in and you'd let them smell it, let them try it, and then boom, another 10, 15, 20 $20 upsell. So that's how sort of my sales, like direct to consumer career started. But it taught me a lot, because you have to be confident enough to provide a service, to charge for the service, and also be able to build the trust of your consumer or of your client, to run the business, right? And to get a haircut especially, it requires a lot of trust, because you don't want to get your haircut messed up and then walk around the next 3-4 weeks with a bad looking haircut. So anyways, I did that for 2.5-3 years. For all the time that I was in Australia. I did some other work while I was still there, because at one point COVID, all the barbershops were locked down and shut as well, so I couldn't work, at least not officially. But people still needed haircuts, so I was making good money, but that's not for the Australian government to know. Anyways, then moved to Berlin, and getting a job in a barbershop was the first job that I was able to get. So yeah, quite naturally, that's what I did, and then started cutting hair here in Berlin at a barbershop quite established or well known, especially among expats. We had a lot of international clients, because it was a criteria for all the barbers there to be able to be speaking to the clients in English. Because what the owners had realized, that there are a lot of internationals who don't know where to go with their haircut and who don't really trust the German.
You were the person who was responsible for bringing in the expat business for haircuts in Germany.
It was probably there before me, but they definitely capitalized on that, because every barber had to be fluent in English. So they could provide an experience and service to internationals working in tech who had a lot of money as well, but who didn't trust the German barbers, because they felt like they never understood what they actually wanted. So they would pay a premium. The haircuts were a bit pricey, but there was also a good way for me to meet a lot of, I don't like to speak in like classes, but like high profile people and founders, entrepreneurs. Even met some VCs and lawyers and stuff like that there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay in touch with all of them, but with a couple of them, still to this day, of clients I had back then. So I had a couple of clients who were working in sales in Berlin at this barbershop that I was working at. And they were telling me, man, you're so good, like handling and meeting people here and running this shop in a way. I mean, I wasn't managing or running the shop, but, doing my thing there. And they would notice as well when I was trying to sell them the newest like hair powder or hair gel that we had. So they were like, why don't you start working as an SDR or working in sales? And I was like, okay, I mean, true. And I've been thinking a little bit, what can I do, how to move forward. My mom wasn't really happy with me to not go back to university or to not pursue a degree or go down that way. And she's like, I didn't raise you to be a barber, basically. So, I also had that like in me intrinsically. I was like, there needs to be more for me to do, not to speak down on any barber.
Right.
I still think it's a great way to start a business. And I have some friends who are still in that business and they make a lot of money as well, especially if you run your own shop or if you're working independently. I think it's a great job. But for me, I knew I wanted to do something different. And then, as I said, met a couple clients who were working in sales, and I was starting to think about it. I was starting to look at different job descriptions, starting to look into what you might need to make that sort of shift. Started reading some books as well. Always, was into books quite a bit and reading and listening to podcasts and whatever. And then I had a client who was a founder who started a startup, right? And he came in super stressed. I was like, what's going on? You seem quite, hectic. And tell me. He's like, funding round and da-da-da-da-da.
But this was at the salon.
This was at the barbershop.
Okay,
Yeah. So he was a client. He came in and he was like, oh man, so much worries on my head right now. And I was like, relax, calm down, and I'll take care of you. What do you need? And then we started speaking naturally, right? I was like, so what do you do? He's like, yeah, I'm a founder. I was like, come on, tell me a bit more. Every second person in my chair feels like it's a founder or some important person. And he was telling me he started this beverage company. I was like, do I need to suck every detail out of you? What kind of beverage? And then he was telling me how he started this kombucha company. And I was like, bro, I love kombucha because in Australia, everyone drinks kombucha. You know what kombucha is?
I've heard, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
You've heard of it. And in Germany, when I came back, and this was still only like a couple months after I've gotten back to Germany, I couldn't find kombucha anywhere, really. And I was like, man, do I have to do this my own? I was already thinking maybe to start some sort of kombucha business because people and friends in Berlin didn't know about it. So then I met him and I told him how much I love kombucha and how much I wanted to try his and how cool, And he was like, hey man, I mean, sounds like you're really into kombucha and you probably know sales, you work here. So why don't you apply and start working for me in sales? We need someone in field sales right now. At the time, no idea what field sales meant. No idea, what his business was really doing. I was like, sounds good. Where do I reach out to you? He gave me his email. I sent him my CV. He invited me for an interview. And then after a week or two, I was given the job, basically. Wow. So that was quite quick. And I'm still grateful to Max. Big shout out to him. We're still in touch. We see each other every now and then. And that's how I landed my first official sales gig and started selling kombucha to restaurants and different independent supermarkets, Edeka and Reves and companies of that sort. And I was literally renting companies' expenses miles for 5 days every week and just driving all around Berlin, stopping at every cafe and every hipster and shop that I could find or yoga studio or whatnot, and try to tell them or sell them kombucha. And for some it worked, for some it didn't, but I did that for, let me think, 7-8 months or so. Did quite a bit and it was fun. It was good. It was a good time. But at one point after the 6th or 7th month, I had completely covered my territory in Berlin. And I was like, what now?
So taken over the main.
I've been to every cafe and I've been to every supermarket where it would make sense to sell this. What's the next step? And I was thinking, what if I can go into remote sales and work in tech? And then I was starting to look for different jobs on LinkedIn. I was setting up my profile and, you can turn it up to a way where recruiters see that you're looking for a job. So I did that and then was reached out to by my previous employer, who was a startup scale-up from Amsterdam, who was looking for a German-speaking SDR based in Berlin because they were just getting into the German market and they were, trying to get someone to help them source leads and do the job that an SDR does, basically, right? So I was like, hey, this is my chance. I can work remotely. And the idea was I'm no longer limited to like a physical territory and no longer I'm like bound to these areas, but I can expand. I can sell to everyone, and like, you know, my sales career will go through the roof. At least so I thought. And then I joined them at the beginning of 2023, and I was there for almost a year and a half until beginning or mid of last year, and then I joined Swan. But that step in between, that previous employer of mine was working in like marketing tech, some sort of freelancer platform, and we were selling that to all kinds of B2B businesses mostly, but with a heavy focus on fintechs. So a lot of our big clients, actually the company I work for now, Swan, was a client of them, or is still a client of them. So that's why I was always in touch with different fintechs, and I was always thinking, man, this is so cool. This would be such a cool industry to get into. But I learned so much there, from going as an SDR or a BDR all the way to an account executive there. I did that progression, started closing my first deals, I think after 8 or 9 months at Contentoo. That was the previous employer for those. Sorry, I didn't know. And then, did the whole sales school there in a way. Learned cold calling, learned cold messaging on LinkedIn, via email, sequencing, all those things that you need to learn to drive business or develop business, quite literally a job title. And then started closing deals as like a junior account executive there. And then switched to Swan at the beginning or mid last year. Now I'm there for almost a year, and that's been a completely different story. But I think I've spoken so much already. This is sort of the whole progression or journey of how I've gotten to where I am today. How I ended up from being a barber. And that's also a crazy thing. It's like it's almost 3 years ago now that I was still cutting hair full time to now working as an account executive. So things can change rather quickly as well, right? But yeah, it's...
I mean, it's super inspiring. That's why I was just listening to you without asking any questions. Because
Sorry if I've rambled for too long. Probably most people already turned off.
No, I think this is super inspiring because I've never met anyone, like who's having worked in a salon or as a barber and turned into an account executive or working at tech. This is the first time. I think you're the first person I've met, and this is already like super inspiring because like, as you rightly pointed out, after barbering, you got into field sales, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best places to start with, like door-to-door sales or on the field.
Yeah,
I think that's the way to do it. I feel like to get to know the real feel of sales.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but I also would. You know what I mean? Like, the experience can be terrible, but it will teach you things for life. It is crazy. I mean, door-to-door sales, I think, is similar, but I even have more respect for those guys. I have a friend who was doing like solar sales or like energy consulting sales door to door, and he was going around somewhere on the outskirts of Berlin or like Brandenburg, just knocking on old people's doors and like trying to make them switch their energy provider. I'm like, bro, that's crazy. The amount of rejection you learn also in field sales, and I think that's what you were getting to. Sorry for interrupting, but that's definitely what I learned there. You have to be so quick on your feet. You have to answer quickly and handle objections quickly, and even like handle people telling you to fuck off or piss off, and you're like, okay. You have to learn to not take it personally, you know?
That's true.
You have to learn to really just completely cut off yourself from the product that you're trying to sell, and just move on and go to the next door or restaurant and do it again.
Exactly. So you have the thick skin mentality, right?
Exactly.
Because this immediately reminded me of one of the episodes from The Office. I don't know if you have watched it. It's
the US version? Or?
The US version.
I love the US. I've seen it twice, probably, or 3 times maybe at this point.
So it's like they fight for a deal. They go to the client. They try to convert them, I
Is
just
this with Andy and Pam or?
no, this is with Dwight Schrute and Michael.
Yeah.
So they try to get, or let's just say, renew a contract from an old client.
Yeah.
And anyways, that's like something for another time. But it's just strike me like
Yeah, I
so
think
because it's field sales and
Yeah.
and the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you is the question I've been thinking so far, whatever you've spoken to me was what drives you actually?
Wow.
Because this is very different. The journey you've had is
Yeah.
completely different from what I've had, right?
Mm.
I mean, I also started in partner sales,
Okay.
but it was again tech and let's just say online software products and everything. But from your point of view, what do you think? Like, what drives you really? Like,
It's a good question, man. Thinking about it, I think what definitely is a key driver for me, and I was talking about this the other day with a friend, of this mentality of like learning over earning and just like continuously growing. That is definitely something I see that drives me, and I start getting frustrated once I feel like the learning curve is sort of flattening, or I feel like I'm not like challenged or like growing. So I would say for me personally, that is a big like factor that drives me. That is for sure the first thing that comes to mind right now, is just like growth on all sorts of levels, right? Like mentally, but it also goes for the gym, and like physically, and then like spiritually and those things. But like continuous learning for sure is one of the big things that drives me. Other things, probably, I mean, to be fully honest, I think everyone who's in sales to some degree likes making money and likes the idea of being somewhat in control of how much they can make, and by, commissions being paid out. I think another thing that I like about sales, and that also drives me in sales, is this whole idea of taking like a lot of ownership and responsibility over your own pipeline, over the deals you close, and then also your earning potential. And in a way, what I also like about it is sometimes it feels like, or it almost feels like you're running a business within the business, right? Because you're meeting all these people, you're making all these connections, and then you're trying to close it to bring revenue to the company, which is in a way running your own little business.
like you're the mini CEO of the company.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of things, right? It's not just like giving a demo and then sending out a contract, but like all the stakeholder management. For us now, it's Swan being in a regular sector. It's similar probably for you working at a bank. You probably know this. There's a lot of compliance that come in. There's just a lot of different stakeholders that have a lot of interest, and you have to sort of manage all of these groups, and you almost become like a project manager, especially when it's a larger deal. And that is something I enjoy to a degree. I have to say it is good, and it teaches you a lot, but you also need to have like long endurance to push through this, especially if it's bigger deals and if it really requires a lot, and the deal cycles become really long. You just need to have that long breath. In German we say der lange Atem, oder den langen Atem haben. I think that is something you also learn, right? The perseverance and just continuously picking it up and being proactive, those things. I think it's a great challenge. Like going to work every day feels like, I don't know if I say this, if it comes off wrong. I don't want to say.
Just say it. I think it doesn't. It's gonna be.
It's challenging. You know what I mean? Like, and I like it. That's the good thing about it. You know, you go to work and you're like, okay, today I need to get these things done because I'm driving this. You cannot be in sales and not be proactive. I think that's true. Kind of what I'm trying to say, and I like that part of me being able to, take ownership, be in control, be in charge, and proactively put things together and make things happen as well, right? Because at the end of the day, even working B2B sales, it's at the end of the day, it also depends on the company you work for. At Swan, we're privileged that we're quite deeply integrated into our partners' product, but in a way, you make something happen, right? You create something by forming a partnership with another business. You change, their way or their path of business. Either you help them save money or energy or time or whatever, or you help them build something new entirely. So that's that's sort of what drives me as well. And then to see that flourish and like to see the fruits of your labor later down the road after having put in all this perseverance and endurance, I think can be quite rewarding as well then.
Of course, I think I would agree with you on the proactiveness part, because something that I also try to improve on it. The more proactive you stay, the better outcome you can expect. So that's something that I also try to abide by. And you also spoke about the challenges previously. So something I just want to touch on. What were some of the, let's just say, 2-3 things that you faced a little bit difficult, or you struggled with, transitioning from like a barber into sales? What were the things that you faced? Oh man, okay, this is super hard than I expected. This could have been better.
I still get this quite a lot, man. Like imposter syndrome, I struggle with, not on a daily basis, but quite a bit. Just this thought of like, who am I and how did I end up in this situation? Because I feel super grateful for the opportunity I have working at Swan and being part of what we're building there. And I look at my colleagues, and especially when I joined, I was like, man, all these people are super smart. A lot of them worked at Google, worked at LinkedIn, were in like Dublin at like the big tech sales, and got their, sales degree from Salesforce or IBM or something like this. And I joined, and I was like, dude, wow, like this is crazy.
Too much pressure.
In a way, yes, but in a good way, because it made me level up and grow, right? That's what I was speaking of. So, but still, I think it creeps in from time to time, this like imposter syndrome of like, do you deserve to be here? And like, who are you to be in this situation? And someone else, should have deserved it more. But I think it also makes one work harder. At least that's sort of what it does for me. And that's how I try to like channel it in a way of like, okay, then like sit down, get to work and try to get things done, or be a little bit more proactive, for example, than someone who might have done all the right things and the CV looks great and did their internship at, I don't know what kind of Big Four company or consulting firm, might not bring to the table because they might not have this like extra little bit of hunger or growth or desire. So coming back to the question, what I was struggling with, I think that for sure now still, I think it's also good in a way. The pressure maybe, but in a good sense. And then thinking of maybe something else. What I enjoy now is at Swan, we try to meet our prospects a lot in person.
Right.
And I like that quite a bit because it established a different kind of relationship, right? And the conversations you have are different. That's also why I wanted to do this podcast in person, right? And not over Zoom and do it like through like a tiny camera lens.
You feel more comfortable when you're with someone in presence, right?
It's a completely different approach. So I like this now, but at my previous sales job before that, I was working entirely remote and like mostly from home. Sometimes I went to a co-working space or worked from a cafe, but the amount of interactions I had on a day-to-day basis were quite limited with like people in real life. Of course, I was having meetings and stuff like this and online, but I was missing that interaction that I had in the barbershop every day where people would come in and sit down and stay for a while and you would, just have that banter talk and like, mostly it's bullshit that you're saying, but at least, you're around people and you don't feel alone or whatever. I think loneliness is a huge issue, especially in like a remote culture that we live in now. People not going to the office or seeing people outside of that. So that for sure during my previous employment was an issue because there was no office here and I didn't really have that many colleagues in Berlin and I didn't really meet prospects in person. So now it's a lot better because I go to the office every day. We have a great culture at the office. Like people there basically become my friends now, or like colleague friends, and we get along really well. And I try to meet prospects as often as I can in person and go out for lunch or organize dinners and stuff like that, because it builds that little bit of extra like trust and also relationship, and leads to great things as well, right? And it's not just prospects like we're trying to meet, just like a lot of people from the ecosystem to build up networks and get into certain conversations that you might not have been able to get access to first. So also for everyone listening, I think that's a great way of leveraging or like going that extra step that someone else might not do, and being proactive and, you know, suggesting, hey, why not grab a coffee and talk about this in person, if you can, obviously. I mean, if you're trying to sell someone who's in Chicago and you're based in London, then it's probably difficult to do, but at least if you're in the same city or same country. I mean, Germany's pretty small. We've done it before. We drove a couple hours by train and then met the company in person as well, and paid off, you know. So going that little bit of extra mile can pay off, as you said as well, right? Being proactive.
Absolutely. I think that's super interesting. Like, the more face-to-face interactions that you have with someone, it could also be a different person, not just a client. So builds a lot of trust and the relationship, the bonding or whatever.
Yeah.
One thing I might want to ask you is the kind of skills that you developed, right? So you mentioned about the challenges, and what were some of the like the top skills in terms of, let's just say soft skills, for example, because you were mostly client facing when you started out. So which skills actually helped you, and what are the skills that you're learning right now? Maybe you can share something on that.
The skills I had to learn and the skills I'm learning right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think skills I had to learn, for sure, coming back to being proactive and approaching people, being, hey, my name is Paul, what do you do, who are you, and get a conversation going in real life, but also via different outbound channels. Those skills, I would say, definitely transfer, because at the end of the day, people like talking to humans, and if it sounds not like you would speak, then I don't think the outbound message will resonate either. So I always try to tell myself, hey, write the outbound message as you would say it in real life. Obviously, it needs to be appropriate. And first message, don't use any curse words if you like cursing a lot. But those things, for sure, I had to learn. So just approaching people, building trust. I think I'm quite good in building a relationship and sparking conversations and keeping a conversation going as well. That is something the barbershop taught me, like, by a landslide. It's just doing small talk, not really talking about anything, but still, because you're talking with them and you're listening to them, you still build a relationship. And if you proactively listen and then ask a great follow-up question, I think that can resonate a lot and build a lot of trust. So I had this one colleague in the barbershop who sort of shared his like mindset or his mental model, how he would do or have a conversation with anyone and about anything, basically. And what he would always tell me is, just listen carefully until the end of what they've said. So obviously you spark a conversation by just, hey, how are you? What are you doing? And then you keep the conversation by listening until the very end, not thinking about your next question yet. And this helped me a lot in podcasting as well. So maybe you can take away something.
Thanks for the tip, though.
So you listen until the very end of their question, and then you ask a follow-up question based on what they have said, and to give some ideas of how he would always do it. He was just saying, I think about like who, what, why, where, or when, and then ask a follow-up question. So if there's someone who's a doctor or whatever, he would ask, why did you choose to become a doctor? And then they would get talking even more. And then they would tell, oh, because my mom died. Oh, I'm so sorry. When did your mom die? Oh, okay. It's not that long ago, man. I hope and then you just keep that process going. That was a quite drastic example, mom dying. Hope that doesn't happen to anyone now. But anyways, so those were a couple things that I for sure had to learn. And I think the skills I'm still learning right now is, now that we're more and more focusing on like higher or bigger deals, it becomes more and more this project management and stakeholder management thing that I was referring to earlier. And those are still like some things I'm like growing in, I would say, and probably need some guidance, or like I appreciate guidance at least from my manager, who was always like super willing to help. And I think that's quite natural as you move more up market and enterprise. There are more and more people involved, and multi-threading and account mapping, and those things become a lot more important. I think that is something I'm learning right now, which is a lot of fun, because you kind of put a puzzle together and then you make it work out at the end. But yeah, I think those are the things that are coming to mind right now. But it's also like continuously like learning things, or like refreshing things that you already know in a way, right? So because the market is changing so quick, and like different outbound channels are coming up, or some old messages won't work anymore, so you always need to continuously work on your craft, right? And continuously think about different approaches of how to reach out or how to spark conversations. So I think it never ends, even with those things I described that I feel like I'm quite good at, like outbounding or like, you know, building relationships. You always learn something new about it, and you know, you're never finished in that sense. At least that's what I believe. Yeah.
Got it. And I just, you know, like thought about something, because you mentioned about mentor. Like you mentioned that you might need someone like to guide you throughout the process, right? So did you have a mentor before, or do you look up to someone, you know, during your sales career? Do you have someone basically like to look up to?
Yeah, I think it changes also with the different like companies that I was working at, or different positions I was in, looking up to different people. But there were definitely some people along my way who deserve a shout out, or who helped me a lot. So while I was still a barber, there was this guy who was a client of mine. His name was Ehsan, and he was working in tech sales as an account executive. And he was like, "Hey man, you should, you know, really look into this, and I can try to help you." And And he first got that like thoughts sparking. And then Max, I already gave a shout out, who basically hired me out of the barbershop. And then Pia and Tim at Contentoo, who were my managers there. And I think this is also what I would tell everyone. Join a company where you really feel like the managers are ready to pour into you and invest in you and really want to see you grow. That was for sure the case with these two, Tim and Pia, who were my managers, one being the head of sales, one being like the account executive I was working with closely. And they were just super involved in my career progression and helping me to where I am now. They were always following, and they said this in the interview process, which was a huge green flag to everyone who might be interviewing right now. Look out for this. If they tell you that they are doing and they called it the Amsterdam or the Ajax Amsterdam model, which is always trying to bring up academy football players, right? So they have this great football academy of like young soccer or football players who are then being trained and coached into joining the pros, the professionals, and playing on the big stage. So they were saying, we like hiring junior people who might not, you know, have any background as an SDR, BDR, which, I mean, I had background in sales, but field sales not the same as tech sales and as a SDR. But what they did was bring in these people and then train them up to become account executives. And there were multiple who did that process, right? Who went from SDR to account executive, and then maybe to RevOps, maybe to marketing, and did different things. And a lot of them are doing great things now. One is a head of sales at some other company. One is like a RevOps leader, all kinds of things. And they truly believed in that, and that is what I would tell everyone. Look out for a company who really encourages training and growth, and is quite invested in that, because what was another sign of that was that they had an external sales coach who would come in every other week, and we would do trainings, role plays, and just Q&A question sessions with her as well. And she was a great help as well. And then my current job, I think that my managers there look up to them a lot, and I think I can learn a lot from them as well. And then a couple other people like that you meet along the way. I did do like one rather unofficial sales coaching a couple, maybe this was like 2 or 3 years ago when I was still selling kombucha. He was like a online sales coach, and he was like, bro, just get out of that and, apply for some SDR roles. You can do it. And also taught me and coached me in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think you always, can learn something from someone, or from everyone. You can learn something, I believe. And with that mindset, I'm sure like everyone can also sort of progress and grow into the person they want to become in a way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. One thing maybe to also like end here, I would say, like, because I don't want to like take it up too much from the conversation here, but also to share for the listeners or also the viewers who are watching this and listening to this, like, what would be your advice to the upcoming generation who wants to get into sales, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say they have zero background in sales and they want to make a bold move of getting into sales.
Yeah.
So what would be like your number one advice that you would tell them?
That's a good question. And I was talking to a friend who was thinking about getting into sales, who also hasn't worked in like tech sales or B2B sales before. And he was looking at jobs, and he was looking at different job descriptions, etc. And he was complaining already a little bit to me, oh, nothing's working, no one wants me. I was like, bro, like, what can I tell you? Like, how many books have you read about sales? How many podcasts have you heard about it? How many, articles did you read? Are your actions really reflecting that you want to get into this? Because if so, then, you would do the research and already start learning about the role before even getting an interview, right? So you need to be prepared for the interview already, even before having one. So I would encourage everyone who would like to get into sales, read some books. I mean, you can probably see the bookshelves there. There's a bunch of sales books in there that I would recommend. Just Google top 5 tech sales or B2B sales books, and I'm sure you'll find a couple of them, and then go through them, or just read the summary on GPT. It's literally never been easier, I think, to absorb information. Listen to some podcasts and already start learning about the position and what you would do as a SDR. I recommend looking into like probably rather junior positions, SDRs or BDR positions. And I think a lot of companies, I mean, I would also have to like back off a little bit. I think the job market has changed for sure since when I like started my sales career, and it's probably a bit tougher now to get a sales job. But I think what your biggest advantage probably is if you speak English. That's given because you're listening to this. And if you speak another language like German, French, Italian, or even some more, I don't know, other languages that are not European languages, I think that is a big asset. And if you've worked in any sort of customer facing job before, like at a restaurant or as a barber like I did, I think you have a lot of the soft skills developed already in you. So stop doubting that, and then learn a little bit about what you would have to do on a day-to-day basis as an SDR. Learn what it means to prospect, learn your way around LinkedIn, set up your LinkedIn profile in a good way. I think that's a huge tip that everyone should take more seriously. And then start connections on LinkedIn, especially with different recruiters at different companies, and just reach out to them and be like, hey, I've been looking at your company and I see there's some open positions. What would you recommend me if I wanted to get into it? Who should I reach out to? Just make connections. I think the more people you meet, the higher the chances are, or you increase your luck in a way to get an interview. And then once you get an interview, prepare the heck for it and look at the company and look at what they do, and then already be confident in a way that you are the man in a sense, or that you can do the job, or you are the woman for the job. And at the interview, I think it's really important to keep in mind that you are basically selling yourself, even though that sounds a little harsh, but that's what you're doing. You're selling yourself to get the job, and you want them to think it's a mistake if they don't hire me. So if you come in with that mindset, I think that will translate into a lot of things, but also don't act like you're an expert if you're not, and don't act like you know it all. Show yourself that you're coachable, or show them that you are coachable. I think that's what a lot of recruiters or managers are looking for, especially in more junior positions like the SDR or BDR role. Show that you're coachable, be humble, but also present yourself confidently, and show them that you are already great when it comes to establishing connections, building relationships, and that you're hungry to learn and that you're hungry to do it. And also show them that you're already doing your own research, reading books, listening to podcasts. And I think what really also differentiated myself from other applicants when I was applying at BDR role before was I was taking notes during the call and then asking great questions during the interview process. And I think that also helped quite a bit, asking questions like, hey, what would make or break this working relationship? What is something you expect of me? What can I do to be well prepared for the next interview, if it comes to that? What was it? Some other questions, maybe some come to mind to you right now, but those sorts of things, right?
I mean, technically, like something I can add here is also the expectations that you would expected, like from the role or the position.
Yeah,
what they expect from you. Or
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a good
something
one.
to clarify that, because I think it's the sales role nowadays. It's a little bit diverse, or let's just say it's become different in terms of the KPIs and everything. So, I mean, end of the day, it's the revenue generation, that's what's expected, but it's through different channels. For example, I am into partnerships, so that's a different way of working, and direct sales at what we are doing right now. So I think it's important to understand the KPIs for sure. And one thing I would also add here is I remember I had a podcast with one of my very first speakers. She was also CFO at this company where I worked. It's called Volopay. And she was one of the speakers. And I remember she said the biggest, the motto was just do it.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Like don't think too much. Just do it.
I mean, as cliche as it sounds,
exactly,
right? Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest the advices I think I've heard, and I've also implemented here and there in my career as well. So, but other than that, I think thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was a fantastic interview. I would say conversation. The podcast.
I mean, great questions.
Thank you so much for sharing your life story and how you got into sales.
Life story sounds so dramatic.
Of course, it's an inspiring story. Like I've never met anyone, as I told you, from being a barber to an account executive. So I'm sure this is also like super inspiring and also interesting for all the listeners and the viewers who are watching and listening.
Yeah.
So thank you once again.
Yeah, I think final word before cutting it off. I think what you just said, I totally agree. Just do it in a way that sounds cheesy, but that was something I always keep in mind still. There's this phrase, I think Denzel Washington said it at some like graduation speech of some great university. He was like, apply for the job that you're unqualified for, just see where it leads you. And if you get there, then you better be a fast learner.
That's true.
And I think what I also want to say to everyone, you don't have to be a genius, or don't think of yourself less than what you are. I think everyone is capable of a lot of great things. And if you believe in yourself, and if you take a little bit of risk, and if you go for it and just make that step into the direction of, and this is like besides sales, right? Of like anything, then you'd be surprised of where it might lead you. And then you could look back and be proud of yourself. And this is from like a 25-year-old guy who doesn't know anything, but
it's still an advice. So
take it with a grain of salt. But anyways, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you. We should do it again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I had a great time talking to you.
Thank you as well. And best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you.
Awesome.